let's do my November reading wrap up.
I'm just sitting here.
Hi everyone, I'm Mara Lee. Welcome to my channel, Book Omens. Today I'm going to do my November reading wrap up. I read a crazy amount of books this month. I was kind of in the beginning of the month in a slump, so I turned to audiobooks, which are really great for that, and I just kept listening and listening and reading, and it actually turned out to be a really great reading month for me. I lost count, but I think I read like 24, 25 books. I have a lot I'm going to talk about, so I'll be very brief in my synopsis of the books. So as always, I will post timestamps. I'm first going to talk about middle grade books, and then I'll do a timestamp for YA and adult books. So if you are not interested in those age ranges, you can just skip ahead to what you want to watch. I actually first read a children's book. In the beginning, I was looking at the Libby app and just seeing what was there. And there was a children's book I saw called Dragons Love Tacos by Adam Rubin. I gave it 5 stars. It was super cute and it kind of helped get me into the mood for reading more. Now, moving to middle grade books, I read Wrecking Ball by Jeff Kinney. I bought a copy of this for my son and daughter from Jeff Kinney. He, the author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, owns a bookstore, and so I ordered from his bookstore and got a signed copy for my kids. This is book number 14 in this book series. I started reading these aloud to my kids when they were just really tiny, and they're older teenagers now, but just out of nostalgia, they keep getting these every year, and they love them, and I do too. They're pretty funny. There are several laugh out loud moments in it, and I really enjoyed this, and of course, I gave it 5 stars. I'm a fan of the series. The next book I read was The Time Paradox by Owen Colfer. I am also an Artemis Fowl fan. I have slowly been reading the series. I started reading this series like when they first started coming out, but then over the years, I kind of had let that lapse. But this is book number 6, and I'm working on finishing the series up. I want to get to the Artemis Fowl Twins series, which is the next series that just started. In the first book, Artemis is a 12-year-old villain, and he is working on developing his villainy powers, and he decides to kidnap a fairy. Of course, over the years, as he grows and changes, he becomes friends with the fairies, and it's like a mixture of science fiction, fantasy. These books are really fun, and I highly recommend them. And then I read Father Christmas's Fake Beard by Terry Pratchett. This is a collection of short Christmas stories. It's really cute. It's illustrated really adorably, and it's a pretty quick read. All in all, I read this every night before going to bed, and it took me just a few days to read. I highly recommend it. My favorite story was the first one, which is Father Christmas's Fake Beard, and yeah, 5 stars. Also, just really quickly, if you take off the dust jacket, it's super cute. It's just a really cute book all around. Okay, another book that I read that's in the younger middle grade age range is Night Napped by Ursula Vernon. So this is book number 10 in the Dragon Breath series, and these books are just pure middle grade fun. So this involves Danny Dragon Breath, who is an endangered species, and his best friend Wendell, who happens to be an iguana. And they go on adventures all around the world, which involves a magical bus system that helps them travel everywhere they want to go. And of course, I really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. Another thing I like about these books is Ursula Vernon's art style. It's really simple with the use of bright colors and really cute. Another book that I read this month was Begone the Raggedy Witches by Celine Kiernan. This book actually just blew me away. It was so good, and I gave it 5 stars. In short, Mup is the main character, and her dad was kidnapped by witches. And she, her mother, her recently dead aunt, and her little brother, who's turned into a dog, have to go and save him. I had never heard of this series before, but I ran across it on Instagram/Bookstagram, and I immediately went to check it out and see if it was available on the Libby app, and it was, so I started listening to it. It was really good. I had a great time, and it has been one of my favorite reads of the month. Another book I listened to was an Audible original called Camp Red Moon by R.L. Stine. It was just pure cheesy fun, kind of like one of those old-time radio programs done with a full cast. It was pretty predictable, but that's what I liked about it because it was easy to listen to, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it, I think, 4 stars. And then the last middle grade book that I read this month was How to Be a Pirate by Cressida Cowell. This is the second book in the How to Train Your Dragon series. This was a reread for me. I just picked it up randomly because I want to start to try to reread this series next year, and I couldn't find the first book, so I grabbed the second one. These books, if you're familiar with the How to Train Your Dragon movies, these books are very different Still really fun. I think of them as basically two different stories, but involving, the same characters. Because Toothless the Dragon is very different. But yeah, it's really cute and fun, and I highly recommend this series. Oh, and 5 stars. Okay, moving on to YA books. I read Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. This is a book I have been meaning to get around to for quite a while, and I finally picked it up. I really enjoyed it. One of the things I liked about it the most was the use of the photography that he used throughout the book. They're all found pictures, and pictures from collections of people that actually, have an interest in those kinds of old photographs. They're real pictures, not just staged for the book. But anyway, there's a horrible family tragedy that sends the main character, Jacob, to a small island off the coast of Wales, where he learns that the stories his grandfather has been telling him his whole life are actually true. I gave it 5 stars. I'm looking forward to reading all the books in the rest of the series now, and if you haven't checked these books out yet, based on my reading of the first book, I recommend them. Then I picked up The Babysitter's Coven by Kate Williams. This was actually really cute. I had meant to get to this in October, but I finished it up in November. One thing I enjoyed about this was reading about the magical aspects. It involves witches and a coven. And even though this is a YA book, it's actually very clean as far as content goes. So I think an older middle grader could easily read this. Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars, and I'll definitely check out any other books that come out in this series. And then I picked up 3 more books in the OMG Shakespeare series. I read YOLO Juliet, Seriously Hamlet, and A Midsummer Night, #NoFilter. These are by Brett Wright and then also Courtney Carbone. And these are just really fun. It's fun to reread these after so many years. I previously having read the actual Shakespeare plays when I was younger in college and high school. I had forgotten how much of a jerk Hamlet is, and also even though Romeo and Juliet is my least favorite Shakespeare play, I find it very problematic because of the insta-love. Yeah, it was pretty fun to read these in, a popular modern time text format, and I really enjoyed them. And then I picked up Frankly in Love by David Yoon. I didn't love this book. What I felt was that I didn't really care about the love aspect of the story, his interest in the girls that he liked. I just didn't really care about that as much. But anyway, here's what I did like about this book, and where I felt it really shined, which was the complex family dynamics and discussions about race. And yeah, I found that I was way more interested in learning about Frank's parents and what might have motivated them to behave the way they did in the story. And then once Frank learned more about his parents and their past, seeing how that affected him and how it caused his character to grow and change throughout the story. I felt like it was handled very respectfully and was really well done, and that's what was able to save this book for me, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. And then I read a couple of graphic novels. For my birthday, which is in early November, I received Clueless Senior Year and then Clueless One Last Summer. These are really cute. I enjoyed the time that they took in making these to reference all the 90s nostalgia stuff. They talk about mixtapes and suggest songs for you to listen to while you're reading this. It's really fun. That was one of my favorite parts of this, actually, was listening to the 90s music while reading these. Then I also read Two Guys Noticed Me and Other Miracles by Marjorie Charmat. I found this in a used bookstore. In fact, I remembered it's labeled especially for girls, and I remembered there were commercials and a book club in the 80s when this book came out. I linked in my last video a bit of the commercial because I totally remember that. But anyway, I just assumed from the synopsis that this book would be a little bit problematic, being from the 80s and a little dated for the time. And it sounded like they'd be fighting, like the main character would be fighting over a boy with another girl. But it was actually a pretty good read. It was about how her mother returned into her life and just moved back into her home with her dad after leaving and basically abandoning them for 2 years. And then she returns and is acting like everything's normal and fine, and she's back and it's all good. So it was about her dealing with that more really than about the boys. I enjoyed it. It was really cute, and I gave it, I think, 3.5 stars, maybe 4. Okay. And finally, moving on to the adult books that I read this month. I have a personal goal of reading all the books in the Discworld series. I don't remember how many I've read and how many I haven't, but I'm starting over. And so I read books number 2 and 3 in the series. Number 2 is The Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett. This continues the adventures of the failed wizard Rincewind and Two Flower, who is basically the Discworld's first tourist. It was fun and I enjoyed it, of course. I'm a fan of the Discworld. And then number 3 is Equal Rights. This is about a wizard who, in his dying moments, bestows his wizarding powers upon a tiny little baby girl. And this gasp has never been done before because girl wizards are not allowed. This is my favorite book of the series so far. This book is actually my personal book from the 90s. I bought this in London when I was living in England during my high school years. And yeah, so this is nostalgia for me. I have a small stack of paperbacks from the 90s of the Terry Pratchett books and just nostalgia. And then I listened to a couple more Audible originals. You know how you get to pick 2 free books each month if you're a subscriber. And so I listened to one called A Mind of Her Own by Paula McLean. And that is about Marie Sklodowska. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, who later becomes Marie Curie. So this story is about the time when she was a young woman and attending the Sorbonne in France, learning science and being one of the very few women that was a part of the program, and how she meets Pierre Curie there. It's quite short, it was only a few hours long, but I really enjoyed this and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I listened to Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. From what I understand, Carmilla is like the original vampire story, and it actually predates Bram Stoker's Dracula by 26 years. It was written in 1872. It had a full cast of characters and was pretty fun to listen to. I enjoyed it. It was pretty cheesy and fun, and the main character Laura did a lot of sighing and heavy breathing, and there was no, wait, what are you doing, to Carmilla? And Carmilla would reply with really dark statements like, "You are mine, you shall be mine, you and I are one forever." And finally, just 2 more stories to go. I read The Mistletoe Inn by Richard Paul Evans. I discovered this book last year when I saw the movie. It was a really cute Hallmark movie, and I am all about Hallmark movies this time of year, and so I thought to look up the book, and actually I didn't enjoy this book at all, really. They took out, there's a number of dark elements in it that they just removed for the movie, which made the movie cute and light and fun. It's no spoiler because it's on the first page, but the main character, Kimberly, her mother struggles with very severe depression, and she attempts and then succeeds in committing suicide on Christmas Day. And yeah, so there's a pretty dark element to this. And, Kimberly, that's something that affects Kimberly her whole life. There was also another part that was funny but kind of disturbing. Kimberly tells her love interest that he kisses like a Hoover vacuum. Just... no, that's not a description that you want to hear about kissing. Despite that, this book is actually pretty sweet. It's a cozy romance. All the talk is kept pretty light and fluffy. It just wasn't for me. I ended up giving it 2 stars, but I do think other people would really enjoy it. I think it has pretty high ratings on Goodreads. I'll check that out and post it. I listened to one last Audible original called You Can Thank Me Later, and actually really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. And this story is about Sophie, and you get to know her and her family over the course of several years as they meet together every Thanksgiving Day. Sophie is not the most likable character at first. She's a little judgmental, but she is experiencing the loss of her very best friend. And there ends up being a lot of character growth in the end, and it's actually a really quite heartwarming story. Well, that is the end of my reading wrap up. I think this is probably the most books I have read ever in a month in my entire life. It's quite a lot. Several of them were short, and then I was able to zip through a lot of them because I did them through Audible books. But anyway, yeah, that's it for my November reading wrap up. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I will see you next time. I'm actually vlogging this week as well for the 'Tis the Season-a-thon, so hopefully I'll be posting those up soon. And I will see you soon in my next video. Bye.